Hidden for years, 1000 plus Roman treasures discovered beneath Lake Neuchâtel in an extraordinary archaeological breakthrough. More than 1000 remarkably well preserved Roman artifacts have been recovered from Lake Neuchâtel, offering a rare glimpse into life during the early Roman Empire. The discovery, initially kept secret to prevent looting, is now being hailed as one of the most significant underwater finds in recent years. Now let's dive deeper and explore every layer of this story in our AI podcast.
When you stand on the edge of a lake and just look out at the water, you are essentially looking at a closed door.
Right, yeah. It just reflects the sky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The surface acts like this giant reflective veil. You might see a duck, maybe a boat, the reflection of the clouds, but the actual depths are completely sealed off from your vision.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely don't look at a calm, quiet lake in Switzerland and assume there is a massive, highly complex, ancient Roman military supply chain just sitting right down there in the mud, just waiting to be noticed.
I mean, it really challenges our fundamental assumptions about where history lives.
Mm-hmm.
We are so conditioned to think of archaeological sites as buried deep under layers of dirt and rock in a desert, or, neatly categorized behind climate-controlled glass in a museum.
Yeah, totally.
We rarely consider that a profound, untouched time capsule from the dawn of the Roman Empire might be sitting just a few dozen feet below where someone is, casually paddleboarding on a Tuesday afternoon.
It's wild to think about, and today's deep dive is really tailored for you listening because it explores exactly that scenario. We are unpacking how a piece of everyday modern technology accidentally pierced that reflective veil and unlocked a 2,000-year-old mystery hiding in plain sight in Lake Neuchâtel.
And it's a massive discovery.
Huge. We are talking about the recovery of over 1,000 incredibly well-preserved Roman artifacts dating to a very specific window between 20 and 50 AD. So, okay, let's unpack this timeline of discovery because the way this site was identified relies entirely on a really bizarre alignment of modern tech and environmental anomalies.
The environmental aspect, it really cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Because in underwater archaeology, you can deploy the most sophisticated sonar and diving gear available, but if the lake ecosystem isn't cooperating, you are entirely blind.
Right.
The initial thread of this discovery was actually pulled by a standard consumer drone flying high above the water, just recording the surface.
Just a normal drone flight, nothing special. But the footage captured a distinct, artificial-looking dark patch resting on the lake bed. And the only reason that dark patch was visible to a camera in the sky was because the lake itself was behaving uncharacteristically.
Exactly, because lakes are incredibly dynamic, highly active ecosystems. Throughout the vast majority of the year, a deep body of water like Lake Neuchâtel has, algae blooms, fluctuating thermoclines, and just immense amounts of sediment constantly getting kicked up by currents and storms.
So the water is essentially a thick soup most of the time.
Yeah, a thick soup. To see the bottom from the air requires the water to settle into this rare crystalline state of clarity. The suspended particulate matter has to drop perfectly to the bottom, and the lighting overhead has to hit at precisely the right angle to penetrate the surface glare.
Which, amazingly, happened just long enough for this drone to register the anomaly. That aerial footage prompted underwater archaeologists Fabian Langenegger and Julian Pfeiffer from the Octopus Foundation to suit up and investigate. But, and this is crazy, they were not diving down with the expectation of finding a Roman treasure trove.
Not at all.
They were bracing themselves for an incredibly dangerous situation.
Yeah, their primary operating assumption was that this artificial dark patch was unexploded ordnance from World War II.
Wow.
Because European lakes, particularly in Switzerland, have historically been used as dumping grounds for thousands of tons of old, unstable munitions. So entering the water with the expectation of finding a volatile explosive fundamentally changes the psychology of a dive.
I can't even imagine.
Right. They're descending into this dark, pressurized environment, approaching an unknown mass. Their breathing is highly controlled. Their movements are meticulously slow so they don't, disturb the water around a potential trigger mechanism.
The tension must have been agonizing. I was trying to picture this, and it's like, imagine you were called down into a dark, cramped basement because someone reported a highly toxic gas leak.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. You are wearing protective gear, you have a flashlight, you are sweating, moving an inch at a time, totally bracing for a disaster. And you shine your light onto the source of the anomaly, and instead of a ruptured gas main, you find the doors to a sealed subterranean historical vault.
Yeah.
The entire emotional reality of the moment flips in a fraction of a second.
And what's fascinating here is the immediate visceral shift dictated solely by color.
Oh, the color, yeah.
The moment their dive lights hit that dark patch on the lake bed, the anticipation of dull, rusted 20th century military metal was instantly shattered. The lights illuminated the unmistakable, vibrant reddish-orange hue of fired ancient terracotta.
Instead of a bomb, it's ancient pottery.
Exactly. The tension evaporates, and it's replaced by the staggering realization that this broken pile of ceramics isn't a hazard at all. It is a massive, undisturbed cargo haul.
Over 1,000 individual pieces of heavy terracotta kitchenware. But I'm stuck on the logistics here because you have 1,000 heavy ceramic plates stacked and scattered on a lake bed. There is even a specific wooden crate among the wreckage that archaeologists were able to date exactly to 17 AD. But there is absolutely zero trace of the massive freight ship that brought it all there. That defies physics. I mean, ships don't just evaporate.
Well, over a 2,000-year timeline, in a dynamic aquatic environment, they essentially do.
Wait, really?
Yeah. We have to separate the cargo from the vessel in terms of material science. So, terracotta is baked earth. Once clay is fired in a kiln, its chemical structure changes. It becomes virtually impervious to aquatic decay. It can sit in fresh water for 10 millennia and remain structurally sound.
But the wood?
Right, wood is highly organic and entirely vulnerable.
So the ship just rotted away while the plates stayed put?
Pretty much. The mechanics of the decay are complex, though. For a wooden hull to survive underwater, it must be buried instantly and completely in an oxygen-free anaerobic environment, like being swallowed whole by deep mud. If any part of that wooden hull remains exposed to the oxygenated water, it is attacked by wood-boring organisms, bacterial decay, and just the relentless mechanical friction of water currents.
So it gets torn apart?
Yeah. The most probable scenario is that the vessel suffered a catastrophic failure. The dense, heavy terracotta cargo sank straight down like a stone to the lake bed, and the buoyant wooden hull drifted away on the surface currents, slowly breaking apart and disintegrating into nothing over the ensuing centuries.
That is wild. 6 weeks of highly trained professionals scouring that lake bed in 2025 and 2026, and the ship is just a ghost. But the cargo that plunged straight to the bottom tells its own incredibly detailed story.
It really does.
We know these 1,000 pieces of terracotta were regional, mass-produced kitchenware. But if it's just plates and soup bowls, why do archaeologists suddenly jump to the conclusion that this was a massive military supply chain, rather than just, a local merchant hauling goods to a village market?
Well, the context is provided by what was interspersed within the kitchenware.
The other artifact.
Exactly. Alongside the mass-produced ceramics, the dive team recovered 2 swords, a dagger, a heavy belt buckle, and a fibula.
And just for you listening, a fibula is a type of ancient Roman brooch or safety pin. But why does a pin mean this was a military operation? Couldn't a merchant wear a brooch?
They could, but not this specific kind. In the context of the early Roman Empire, a heavy bronze fibula of this design was a distinct, highly specialized piece of equipment. It was used to clasp the thick, heavy wool cloaks worn by Roman legionnaires.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So when you combine that specific clasp with standard-issue military swords and a dagger, you are no longer looking at the personal effects of a civilian sailor or a regional trader. These are the unmistakable accoutrements of heavily armed, highly trained military personnel.
Which means this shipment of kitchenware required a military escort.
Exactly the conclusion the researchers reached. The presence of specialized military guards traveling with everyday ceramics indicates a profoundly massive logistical operation. I mean, you don't assign elite troops to guard a few crates of bowls destined for a local tavern.
Right, that would be overkill.
Totally. Archaeologists estimate that based on the volume of the cargo and the presence of the military escort, this convoy was likely part of a supply chain intended to feed and support a legion of up to 6,000 men stationed at a nearby regional camp.
6,000 soldiers. The logistics of the Roman war machine are just staggering.
They really are.
You have this intersection of the incredibly mundane, like ensuring there are enough bowls for the mess hall protected by heavy military might. But while the weapons and the 1,000 plates tell us the macro story of a 6,000-man legion, the excavation also yielded a fragile, intimate artifact that tells the micro story of the individuals actually sailing that lost ship.
Yeah, the contrast between the sheer scale of the military cargo and the fragility of this specific artifact is remarkable.
It's my favorite part of this whole discovery.
Me too. Amidst the heavy terracotta and bronze weapons, the team recovered an intact, woven wicker basket.
An actual wicker basket surviving underwater since the dawn of the Roman Empire.
It's unbelievable.
To put this into a modern perspective for you, it's like discovering a massive corporate delivery truck flipped over in a ravine. The 1,000 terracotta plates are the official, heavily insured corporate cargo strapped down in the back. But this wicker basket, this is the driver's personal lunchbox sitting on the passenger seat in the cab. It's intimately tied to the people doing the grueling physical labor of the empire.
And its very existence defies our typical expectations of archaeological preservation. Wicker is composed of thin, dried plant fibers, pure cellulose.
Right.
In almost any other environment, it would have dissolved completely within a decade.
So how did it survive 2,000 years?
It comes down to the specific chemistry of Lake Neuchâtel's sediment. The lake bed in this region is composed of a chalky mud, which is highly alkaline.
Okay, so alkaline, not acidic.
All right. This alkaline environment effectively neutralizes the specific bacteria and microorganisms that aggressively consume plant-based cellulose. It is the chemical opposite of a highly acidic peat bog.
Oh, like the bog body?
Exactly. Acidic bogs dissolve calcium in bone, but preserve skin and organic matter. This alkaline chalk mud acts as a chemical time capsule specifically for plant fibers, encasing the basket and shielding it from decay.
So the chemistry of the lake essentially froze it in time, and what was inside the basket is just as revealing as the fact that it survived it all.
Yeah, inside the basket, researchers found 6 specific ceramic items. And what is crucial to note is that these 6 bowls were noticeably rougher, simpler, and completely distinct from the thousands of identical, mass-produced military plates in the main cargo hold.
They weren't part of the official shipment.
No, they were clearly meant for the ship crew's personal everyday use.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why the historians and laboratory teams are so thrilled right now. Because inside those 6 simple bowls, there are potential food remnants currently undergoing microscopic and chemical analysis.
Which is the absolute holy grail for historians studying antiquity. I mean, think about it. History is almost exclusively written by and about the elites.
Right, the emperors and generals.
Exactly. We have vast records detailing the exotic banquets of emperors. You know, the imported flamingos, the specialized wines, the lavish spices. We know what the generals ate in their command tents.
Not the regular people.
We know virtually nothing concrete about the daily caloric intake, the diet, or the agricultural realities of the working-class Romans.
The sailors who actually rowed the boats loaded the heavy terracotta and sustained the empire's infrastructure.
Precisely.
If those remnants yield usable chemical data, we get a direct window into the fuel that built the Roman world. But getting that wicker basket, those swords and those 1,000 plates out of the water and into a modern laboratory was an incredibly sensitive operation.
Very sensitive.
Because the moment you realize how pristine these artifacts are, leaving them at the bottom of a busy Swiss lake becomes an immediate modern-day liability.
Yeah, the Octopus Foundation recognized that they were dealing with a highly vulnerable site. Their primary defense mechanism was absolute secrecy.
They couldn't tell anyone.
The discovery was kept strictly under wraps to prevent any localized looting. Because once the public learns that authentic Roman weapons and artifacts are sitting relatively shallow in a local lake, you invite a wave of amateur divers who could irreparably damage the context of the site, even by accident.
But amateur divers weren't the only threat, right? Julian Pfeiffer, the head of the operation, explained that anything at risk from commercial activity had to be brought to the surface immediately. And the most aggressive threat to a site like this is commercial fishing equipment.
Oh, absolutely. Bottom trawling nets are devastating to underwater archaeological sites.
They just drag across everything.
Imagine a heavy weighted net dragging indiscriminately along the lake bed to catch fish. If that net snags on a 2,000-year-old wooden crate packed with terracotta, it doesn't just pull it up. It shatters the ceramics, rips the crate apart, and scatters the historical context across miles of lake bed.
It's a nightmare scenario.
It is. The rationale for the massive, multi-week recovery operation was preservation by extraction. They could not leave the site's survival up to the chance trajectory of a fishing boat.
And here's where it gets really interesting. When you pull 1,000 ancient plates out of a lake, they are encased in 2 millennia of heavy, dense mud.
Lots of mud.
The cleaning and restoration process that happens in the lab isn't just about making the plates look presentable for a museum display. When the artifacts are resting on the lake bed, they are surrounded by thick sediment clouds. You can't see the micro details.
Right.
But in the laboratory, as researchers painstakingly wash away that alkaline mud, they are extracting entirely new data sets.
Because the mud acts as a protective barrier, preserving microscopic data that would otherwise be lost to friction.
Sure.
As the lab technicians clear the sediment, they are uncovering specific manufacturing marks stamped into the pottery.
Like ancient serial numbers.
Exactly. These stamps act like ancient barcodes, allowing historians to trace the exact regional workshop that fired the clay. They are carefully scraping the food traces from the cruise bowls. They are even extracting the original 2,000-year-old straw that was stuffed into the wooden crate as protective packing material for the journey.
Straw from the year 17 AD, still intact. That just blows my mind. It really forces a massive paradigm shift in how we view the field of archaeology itself.
It does.
When we look at this single discovery in Lake Neuchâtel, researchers are realizing that the world's oceans, and particularly its deep, sediment-heavy lakes, function as vast, untouched preservation vaults. They likely hold far more historical treasures than all of the existing land-based museums on the planet combined.
Because traditional land-based archaeology is inherently destructive. Cities are built on top of older cities, crushing the layers beneath them. Wars, agriculture, and urban development constantly churn the earth, destroying fragile artifacts.
Well, land is always changing.
But a deep body of water acts as an isolating barrier. It removes the artifacts from the chaotic cycle of human development and protects them in a static, low-oxygen, low-light environment.
It's like a natural safety deposit box.
Yes, and we are only just beginning to develop the drone technology and sonar capabilities required to actively catalog these aquatic archives.
So, what does this all mean for us, and when can we actually see this newly discovered archive? Well, the source text notes that the Octopus Foundation is currently compiling their vast amounts of data into a comprehensive book detailing the entire excavation process.
That'll be amazing to see.
And they are also deep into the production of a documentary film, which is slated for release in 2027.
That visual documentation will be critical for the public to truly grasp the scale and the physical challenges of extracting 1,000 fragile items from the mud. Furthermore, the artifacts themselves are slated for a major exhibition at Latinium, Switzerland's largest archaeological museum. Once the exhaustive, multi-year laboratory cleaning and analysis phase is complete.
Because it takes time to carefully remove 2,000 years of mud from 1,000 individual plates while searching for microscopic food traces.
It's painstaking work.
It really is. So we've traced the timeline from a drone flying over unusually clear water to the fear of a World War II bomb, the physics of a missing ship, the logistics of a 6,000-man military supply chain, and the miraculous chemistry that preserved a sailor's wicker basket.
I think the most compelling takeaway from this excavation is how it alters our spatial relationship with history.
How so?
Well, we tend to compartmentalize the past. We view history as something safely contained behind velvet ropes in a building or buried in a remote, exotic desert. It feels finished and distant.
Right, like it's over there, away from our daily lives.
But this discovery shatters that compartmentalization. If a slight temporary clearing of suspended algae in a standard Swiss lake can suddenly reveal the physical infrastructure of the Roman Empire, hidden just a few dozen feet below the surface, it begs a much larger question.
So what does this all mean? A question of what is hiding directly under our noses.
Precisely. What other lost legacies, missing ships, or perfectly preserved time capsules are you unknowingly boating over, swimming in, or driving past right now in your own region? If the waters covering our planet truly hold more history than our museums, we aren't at the end of archaeological discovery. We are perhaps just one clear day or one drone flight away from completely rewriting human history all over.
Okay, one question for you. Considering the shipwreck itself has not yet been found, what hypotheses can archaeologists make about how and why the Roman cargo ship sank? And what methods might help locate the missing wreck in future explorations? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.